Good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Derline. I am the Executive Director of the Office of Educator Licensure and Preparation. Thank you for joining us for the Specialty Area Program Audit webinar. We will be recording this webinar and sharing it broadly so we can ensure that folks across the state are able to access it and understand the purpose for why we're doing this audit and the expectations for submitting information. So before we jump in, I'm going to go ahead and have my colleagues introduce themselves, folks who are in the room.
Good morning, this is Annie Ansana, Director of Literacy for Educator Preparation and Induction Programs.
And this is Hugh Potter.
I'm Martin Nash. I work in the area of program approval.
So I would imagine everybody on this call has seen this before. We have, over the last few years, really tried to guide all of our work in this shared vision. The process for approving educator preparation providers supports the continuous improvement of preparation programs and the work of developing teachers and leaders who are able to effectively educate students. So this vision statement really guides all of our work related to revisions we've made to the approval process, the data systems that we are building, the annual reports that we release each year. And through this webinar, you will get a sense of why we believe it is important to have a very comprehensive and accurate record of all of the specialty area programs and pathways that are offered in our state. And you will also gain an understanding of how this information will connect to other data systems and processes. So the purpose of the webinar itself is really to develop a shared understanding of the design, language, and components associated with specialty area programs. We've noticed through both the literacy program review process as well as specialty area program reviews, both during the comprehensive review and proposals, that there has been quite a bit of confusion around some of the language used to describe program types, clinical types, and pathways in general. So we wanted to make sure that we spent some time clarifying that information on this webinar. And then we're going to provide some information about the specialty area program verification process, so the data that we will collect, how we will collect it from you, and how it will be used as well. And as a result of this webinar, TN Atlas, the system that we are building for educator, all things related to educator preparation, will reflect a very accurate and granular record of the specialty area programs, including endorsement areas, clinical experience types, and program levels. Ultimately, this data from TN Atlas will be portaled over to the TN Compass system, and our vision is that that information will be available to you as you make recommendations for licensure. If you can kind of think ahead, what that means is that we'll be capturing quite a bit of data related to each individual you recommend for a license, which will relieve the burden on programs to provide data for the report card and annual reports process. So we've already done welcome and introductions and purpose of the webinar. Martin's going to go over key terms for specialty area program design. We're going to discuss alignment to standards and specialty area program configurations as well. And then we'll get into the specialty area program audit process and the timeline. Again, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please send them to me in a private message, which I believe you can do with the Q&A function on your WebEx Event Center. And this won't be the only time that we can have conversations about this. You're also welcome to email any of us following the webinar. And again, we will be recording this webinar and sharing it broadly, so you'll be able to share with your colleagues who were maybe unable to join. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Martin.
Thanks, Michael, and good morning, everyone. One of the first things we want to make sure everyone is clear on are some terms that we have a shared language around these items related to specialty area programs and the approval process. So clearly we need to understand what is a SAP as we refer to it. This is the required components that I want to emphasize the word designed to lead to initial licensure and program completion. So it's that whole design emphasis that is really the focus of what we want to communicate today, that everything that we speak about is within this context of being designed. We have learned a lot of lessons, as Michael just referred to, through the literacy standards alignment process, the proposals for the interventionist endorsements, the middle grades endorsements, and other proposals, that there has been some additional information we need to share about these special area programs and pathways as well. And beyond what a SAP is, what is a program pathway? Well, a program pathway is that combination of the program level, and as you see, there are two levels that we're referring to, the undergraduate level and post-baccalaureate level, and the clinical practice type associated with that program level. And in our policy, we have these three types. I do want to point out that this webinar is only going to focus on initial preparation programs related to preparing teachers for classrooms. It does not include school service personnel or occupational educator preparation programs. We will likely have a similar kind of webinar about those in the future. So this notion of a program level, and we've already identified there are two types. There's the undergraduate preparation program, and these are programs designed to meet initial requirements and a bachelor's degree. In the case of undergraduate programs, candidates do not already possess a bachelor's degree versus a post-baccalaureate program where a candidate has already earned a bachelor's degree. A post-bac program can be offered at the undergraduate level, it could be at the graduate level, and may or may not lead to an advanced degree. One of the things we're moving away from very quickly is differentiating post-baccalaureate programs as being traditional post-bac versus alternative. Where that comes into play is based upon the clinical type. And we have these three types of clinical practice types. The text at the upper part of the slide is directly out of the EdPrep policy. This has to do with differentiating a clinical practice from more general field experiences. And every SAP that goes through an approval process in our state must include at least one of these types of clinical practices. You will also note that in this table that all clinical practice types must have at least two different settings. Student teaching clearly is a pre-service type. The internship as well is pre-service, but job embedded by definition allows someone to be a teacher of record while they're completing their program. We also want to make sure we're clear on what is an endorsement and what types of endorsement programs are connected to specialty area programs. Again, I want to point out the word designed in that first description of an endorsement program. These are programs designed to lead to one endorsement through an approved pathway, and it must meet all the required elements for that initial preparation program. We also have dual endorsement programs. Again, the key word here is they are designed to lead to two endorsements. And again, it's through an approved pathway, and it must meet all the required elements for both endorsements. One of the things I do want to point out is that there have been programs proposed that simply propose one component or one side of a dual endorsement program, where they basically are saying we have an approved program in one endorsement, and with this additional component, we want to offer a dual endorsement. That's not an approved specialty area program or pathway. When a program is approved as a dual endorsement, it must include all components for both endorsements offered. I want to differentiate these two types of initial preparation programs involving endorsements versus an additional endorsement. The key in this slide is that these are customized programs for licensed teachers. These are licensed teachers who have already completed an initial preparation program. So they are not considered to be additional endorsements if it involves initial preparation. This is only for licensed teachers who have already completed an initial preparation program. In terms of program design, these are the basic components of that program design. And you'll see that there is an asterisk related to alignment to standards, and it can vary based upon the program level and clinical practice type. For example, for admission to a job-embedded specialty area program, that content knowledge or that discipline-specific knowledge associated with the endorsement program must be verified as part of program admission. So in all likelihood, the requirement to align the specialty area standards to a program that includes job-embedded clinical practice would not be part of the proposal requirements. And in terms of configuring pathways, this table identifies the two different levels that have already been pointed out, the undergraduate level and the post-baccalaureate level, and what constitutes those two levels, and connecting it to the clinical type. So in this table, you'll see the and or statements. There are EPPs in our state that may, and they certainly do, offer multiple pathways that lead to the same endorsement. And each pathway must be approved. Even though they may share various components and some of the components may be identical at different levels, all different pathways as configured by design must be approved. So in this case, a post-baccalaureate program can certainly include any or all of those clinical types, but we need to make sure that when a program is submitted and reviewed, that each pathway is clearly identifiable, and that candidates can negotiate through a prep program through different pathways as well.
So I'll step in at this point. This is Hugh. I want to talk a little bit about the process and timeline for the collection of information. For the SAP audit, we're going to ask EPPs to validate a pre-populated list of pathways that are identified at this point in time for an EPP. When you get a spreadsheet, and I will take a moment to share with you that the spreadsheets will be delivered to the identified data director via email in much a similar process that we used for the annual reports data collection, but it will be different this time because without sensitive information, we'll be able to send the spreadsheets back and forth via regular email. So we will deliver to the data director, data contacts, a pre-populated spreadsheet that we will ask you to confirm and validate information by row. So we will ask you to take a look at a particular row, and I will show you an example in just a second, to take a look at a particular row that identifies a specific pathway And we'll ask you to identify if you do currently offer that, and if you do, there's a drop-down menu where you'll select yes and move to the next row. If the row is not accurate, we'll ask you to select no from the drop-down and then add a short explanation as to why that is incorrect in column F, and it will make sense in just a second. If there's a SAP that is not present in the spreadsheet, but it is one that you do offer, we'll ask you to add that using a pre-populated drop-down menu that's on the spreadsheet you'll get. So let's take a quick look at the spreadsheet. If you look at the spreadsheet that's in front of you, you'll notice in row 2, we ask for the data contact. I will pre-populate that and put in contact email or phone information. On row 2 as well, there's the EPP unit head, and we'll get to that in just a second, but we'll use that as a final verification of SAPs that are offered by endorsement, program level, clinical type. So if we look at row 6, in row 6, we identify that English 612 is the endorsement of interest at this point in time. It's offered at the undergraduate level, and the clinical type is student teaching. And because that's accurate, we selected yes. If we take a look at row 7, it's the exact same endorsement, but it's at the post-bac level, and the clinical type is student teaching. You'll notice that I selected no as a program that is not offered because it was discontinued in 2015. So this is the process that we'll ask you to look at. Now, when you get your spreadsheet, columns A, B, and C, so endorsement, program level, and clinical type, you will not be able to modify that at that level. What you will be able to do is select whether or not the program is offered, and if it's not offered, you'll be able to give us a brief description of why not at that point in time. As you'll notice on the lower part of the screen, there's a section where you can identify either updated or added SAP records. We consider each row to be a record. And so if you look at row, what in this case is row 87, we've identified French 612, pre-K 12 at the post-bac internship level. We're going to add that record. And then the next row, we have biology, undergraduate student teaching as 2 records we're adding. The differentiation between these two is if you'll notice above in row 10, the French 612 is nearly identical as to the row 87. The difference is that in row 87, it's identified as an internship. So that's where we see the differentiation. Row 88 is a record that we did not pre-populate, but that you offer. So this is what a spreadsheet will look like for you. The top section will be what it looks like when it arrives, and then the bottom you'll add to it to help us identify the programs offered. Now, once you've completed the spreadsheet, we'll ask that your EPP unit head review and place a digital signature in that upper right-hand area, and then we'll ask that the file be returned to me so that we can aggregate all and keep track of the submitted files and have a record of the individuals that have returned them at that point. The timeline that we'll be working with is that we will deliver files to the data contacts during the week of July 16th through the 20th. We'll ask that you return those files to the department, to me, by Friday, August 17th. Now, you're welcome to submit those files at any point in time during that window, at which point we'll do an initial review. We'll confirm that you have submitted the file, and if there are any questions that we have. If you have any questions about the file delivery, the validation, or the submission process, please feel free to email anyone on our team, but I will be happy to supply any information necessary for you as we go through this process. Again, because we do not have sensitive data in these files, we will be able to use regular email to ensure speed and accuracy with this file submission process.
Thank you. I would just add that following this process, it is likely that we will have to have some additional back and forth with you. For example, if you note that a program has not been offered since 2015 in the example that Hugh reviewed, if we do not have on record a formal declaration that you are no longer offering that program, that may be something that we need to get from you. So that's this is a process that will likely be kind of a bit of a back and forth following the initial communication. So please make sure that the individual who is responsible for reviewing and completing the spreadsheet is very knowledgeable about these types of processes. So that's really all we had. Up on the screen now, you should see some websites that would be helpful for you, as well as staff contact information. We are always here to answer any questions you may have. I have not, at this point, received any questions privately through the webinar system, but we will just wait a minute or two, and if you do have any questions, please feel free to send them through and we'll address them on this webinar so that everyone can hear.